Before you scroll past, take a moment to breathe, because what you're about to hear will leave you speechless. If you've ever believed in love, loyalty, or second chances, this story will challenge everything you thought you knew. So hit subscribe, because what happened between Dylan Wang and Shen Yue at the airport was never supposed to be seen, and once you hear the truth, you'll never look at them the same way again. The story begins with a quiet morning that felt ordinary, but nothing about that day was. The cameras were everywhere, the noise of travelers filling the terminal, yet in the middle of it all stood Dylan Wang, wearing a black hoodie and sunglasses, trying to disappear in plain sight. But he wasn't alone. Just a few meters away, Shen Yue stood frozen, her suitcase beside her, her eyes locked on him like she was seeing a stranger she used to know too well. For months, rumors had been swirling. Whispers of a breakup, unspoken arguments, and silent treatments that no one could confirm. But that day at the airport, the truth finally began to unravel. A fan who happened to be nearby started recording, not knowing that the next few seconds would go viral across every social platform within hours. Dylan moved first. His steps were slow, careful, but heavy. You could feel the distance between them, not in meters, but in memories. Shen Yue didn't move at all. Her face carried something between anger and heartbreak, the kind of expression that only happens when love turns into silence. When Dylan spoke, his voice was low, but the cameras caught it. He said, "You could have told me instead of letting them tell the world for you." Shen Yue didn't reply immediately, her hands shaking as she reached for her phone, as if trying to find the courage to speak. Finally, she said, "I didn't owe the world anything, but I thought I owed you peace." That line cut deeper than anyone expected. People watching later would rewind the clip just to hear her tone, soft but final. Dylan looked away for a moment, his jaw tight, then said something that made fans lose their minds. "Peace doesn't come from silence, it comes from truth. And you left me with neither." The tension in that single exchange was electric. The video only lasted 30 seconds, but every frame felt heavy with history. What no one knew was that this wasn't their first encounter since their breakup. They had crossed paths before, quietly, secretly, trying to find closure away from cameras, but something about that day made everything come to the surface. Insiders later claimed that Shen Yue had discovered messages on Dylan's phone months before, messages that weren't what they seemed, yet enough to plant doubt in her heart. Others insisted it was the industry pressure, the endless schedules, the way fame pulls people apart even when they love each other deeply. No one could confirm the truth, but what everyone saw at the airport told a story words could never fully explain. As Dylan walked past her, Shen Yue called out his name. The way she said it broke something in the air. He stopped, his hand clenched at his side, then turned back slowly. She asked one question that silenced the terminal. Was she worth it? You could hear gasps even in the video. People nearby stopped moving. Dylan's face went blank. He didn't speak for several seconds. Then he said quietly, "She was never real." None of it was. Those words shattered the internet. Some said he was talking about a rumor, others believed he meant fame itself, but what mattered was the look in his eyes. Pain. Regret. Acceptance. It was all there. Shen Yue nodded once, tears threatening to fall but never quite making it past her lashes. She whispered something the microphones didn't catch, then turned and walked away without looking back. Dylan stood there, watching her until she disappeared through the security gate. The video ended there, but the story didn't. Later that night, Dylan posted a single photo on his social media. It was of the sky, cloudy and pale, with the caption, "Sometimes goodbye is the only way to be honest." Within minutes, Shen Yue replied with just one emoji, a broken heart. Fans flooded the comments, begging them to reconcile, but deep down everyone knew it was over. Still, something didn't add up. A few days later, a leaked message surfaced online showing that Shen Yue had been protecting Dylan all along. She had taken the blame for something he never did, something that could have destroyed his career. Her silence, the distance, the heartbreak, it was all part of her choice to shield him from a truth the world wasn't ready to hear. When Dylan found out, he reportedly broke down. He hadn't realized the extent of her sacrifice. Every argument, every misunderstanding, was built on a foundation of misplaced trust. The one thing he thought was betrayal had actually been love in disguise. Weeks passed. The world moved on, but Dylan didn't. He spoke in an interview months later, his voice steady but heavy with meaning. He said, "I thought she walked away because she stopped caring. Now I know she left because she cared too much." That line echoed through the hearts of millions. Fans replayed it again and again, feeling every ounce of pain behind his words. Shen Yue, on the other hand, stayed silent. No posts, no interviews, no appearances. Just quiet. But in that quiet, there was peace, maybe even closure. And yet, deep down, people still wondered. Was the airport encounter really an ending, or was it the start of something new? A few eyewitnesses later claimed they saw them again, this time in a quiet cafe in Seoul, sitting together without cameras, without tension, just silence and understanding. Maybe it was reconciliation, maybe just two old friends finding forgiveness. Either way, it was enough to remind the world that not all endings are final. Sometimes, the most powerful stories don't end with words, but with the silence that comes after them. So if you've ever lost someone, misunderstood or misjudged, let this story remind you that truth has a way of finding its way through even the darkest silence. And before this video ends, don't forget to subscribe, because what's coming next in this unfolding story will take everything you thought you knew, and turn it upside down. The airport was quiet now, almost haunting. The announcements echoed faintly through the glass walls as the night lights shimmered on the polished floor. Dylan stood where Shen Yue had left him hours ago, staring at the empty space where her figure once stood. He didn't move. He didn't blink. The world felt frozen around him. Every sound seemed distant, the rolling suitcases, the fading footsteps, the quiet murmur of voices in the background. Yet his heart was louder than all of it. It beat with memories, with echoes of laughter that used to fill their world before everything fell apart. Shen Yue's flight had already departed, but Dylan couldn't walk away. Not yet. Not after everything that had just happened. He reached into his pocket and pulled out her bracelet, the one she dropped while turning away from him. It was small, delicate, and still warm from her skin. His hands trembled as he whispered, "You always said this would remind you of me." He closed his eyes, and the flashbacks began to pour in, moments of them walking under the rain after a late shoot, her laughter when he pretended to get lost on purpose, the promises they made to always protect what they had, even when fame got in the way. But promises fade faster than love when silence replaces words. Shen Yue, now seated by the window thousands of miles above, held her phone tightly. She had written a message to him but never sent it. The words were simple, "I didn't want to leave, but I had to." She looked out at the night sky, wondering if he was still standing there, hoping he wouldn't forget the sound of her voice. The breakup wasn't loud. There were no shouting matches, no dramatic exits in front of cameras. It was silent, painfully silent. The kind of silence that carries everything unsaid. Dylan remembered the look in her eyes before she turned away. They were filled with tears, yes, but behind them was something else, exhaustion. The kind of pain that comes from loving too deeply for too long. He finally walked out of the airport when the lights began to dim. Reporters were already outside, waiting, whispering. They wanted answers, a statement, a reaction. But Dylan said nothing. He just looked at the sky and whispered to himself, "Let her be free." Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The world moved on, but their fans didn't. Hashtags started flooding the internet again, hashtag Dylan Shen reunion, hashtag airport goodbye, hashtag the love that should have lasted. But behind the headlines, behind the trending posts, both Dylan and Shen Yue were silently watching. She returned to her projects, her smile bright but hollow. He disappeared for a while, taking on fewer interviews, staying off the radar. The distance between them wasn't measured in miles anymore. It was in emotions, in regrets, in the words they wished they had said before walking away. One night, Dylan posted a cryptic message on his social media. It read, "Sometimes, the greatest love story is the one that never finds its ending." Within hours, it went viral. Fans flooded the comments section, linking it to the airport encounter, saying he was talking about Shen Yue. Some said he was trying to reach her in his own way, through words, through silence. Meanwhile, Shen Yue was seen in an interview a few days later. When the host asked her about Dylan, she paused, looked down, and said quietly, "Some people stay in your heart even when they no longer stay in your life." The studio went silent. Even the host couldn't find the right words. It was the kind of raw honesty that only comes from real pain. Later that night, Dylan watched that clip alone. He smiled faintly, tears glistening in his eyes. He whispered, "I heard you, you." The screen faded to black as the sound of an airport announcement played again, the same sound that started it all. And then, a single line appeared. "Some goodbyes aren't endings. They're promises to meet again, in another time, another place." And so, the world still wonders, was that truly the end of Dylan and Shen Yue's story, or just a pause before fate brings them back together? Whatever happens next, one thing remains true: their connection was real, their emotions unforgettable, and their goodbye, eternal. If you felt this story, drop a red heart in the comments and let us know if you believe love deserves a second chance. Subscribe for more emotional stories that will make your heart race, your soul ache, and your mind wonder, what if it were you? Would you like me to now craft the YouTube SEO package for this part 2 so that both parts trend together under one long cinematic video?